As the sun rises on Israel after a nail-biting election night, voters are still unsure about who exactly their new prime minister will be. Two party leaders have both claimed victory, but some say in the end the results won't mean much for those whose voices have been left out of this campaign. A victory speech from incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the early hours of the morning, preceded by another one from his opponent. Benny Gantz optimistic his blue and white party will ultimately form a new government in Israel after more than a decade of rule under Bibi.
They do not have a very, very clear notion out there of how they are going to govern. But the one thing that is clear is that it's not Bibi. So these elections was whether it was a referendum about Bibi.
Netanyahu called the election while facing corruption and bribery charges, but it seems that may not be enough to keep him from returning for his fifth term as PM. The right-wing party leader warned voters that failing to vote for him would result in a leftist government.
He's a magician in terms of constructing a reality for the people that everything or anything that is not him and his policies are left.
Is that at all true?
No, it is not. He presents himself as a centrist right, Gantz, and actually that's more or less the truth.
The reason for the uncertain results is that Israeli government is formed by the party that gets the most number of seats. And as it stands, neither Benny nor Bibi have enough to form a majority. They'll likely have to create a coalition with other groups to take the lead.
Really, in the end of it, there isn't really much of a difference.
It's all the same for some Palestinians who aren't hopeful that a change in leadership would mean anything positive for those living in occupied territories. Lean Amarin has extended family in the region and says she's disappointed but not surprised that there's been little talk through the campaign about the potential impact on Arab Israelis and Palestinians.
We can't really think about the Israeli regime with a pro-Zionist agenda ever being good for Palestinians.
Analysts have said Netanyahu's campaign promise of annexing the West Bank has effectively killed any hope for a two-state solution. And while Gantz has said little about his stance on the matter, Amarin isn't hopeful Palestinians will fare any better under his rule, considering he was the Israeli Defense Forces chief of staff during 2014's Operation Defensive Edge.
This is also something that he's considered to be one of his biggest victories. If anything, I would say the greatest difference is that maybe Gantz will be seen by the West mainly as kind of a peacemaker or the symbol of peace or whatever it is, which might ultimately become more dangerous for Palestinians. In the end, is it better to face an evil that is outright in your face or one that is kind of somewhat hidden?
Our reports suggest that the numbers are leaning in favor of a right-wing coalition for Netanyahu. If he wins, he would become Israel's longest-serving prime minister. But with those corruption charges looming, a conviction could see Israel heading to the polls again within a year.